Before I start what I was going to go through with you, I'd like to just address some of the comments made by Mr. McGilvery. Please keep in mind that what he said and what I said is not evidence. You've heard the evidence from multiple expert witnesses and others, and now it's your time to sift through that and determine whether the applicant's met its burden. Before I get to that, though, we've heard a lot about this smaller building, smaller building, smaller building. Mr. Lusk came up with something that he said was a concept. Sounded more like a sketch on the back of a napkin to me, and the cost sheet, if you look at it, is extremely lacking. And if you keep in mind what he was trying to do, you can understand why. But when I cross-examined him, as you may recall, he said, I didn't include any land costs, he didn't include architectural fees, he didn't include engineering fees, he didn't include financing fees, legal fees, all the costs you can imagine what it's cost Mr. Reuter just to go through this process now, which has now been going on close to 2 years. So in terms of the argument that the smaller building could be built and it would be economically feasible, that has not been shown. That was just a weak attempt to show that something else could be built. There's no depth to it. There's no analysis to it. The costs, as I said, are extremely way off, way off. And if you look at it, you'll see why. And the parking deck issue has been brought up on multiple occasions. You have a plan from phase one which shows that the parking deck was on the plan for phase one for the Belvedere Hotel, and it was required by the planning board. Why would one go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, to create a parking deck if one didn't need it? It makes no sense. And you have to use your common sense during your consideration of this matter. And let's get the height variance, let's get that straightened out, please. The height variance is required in part because the HDC wanted a steeped roof. Had we gone with just a flat roof, which would have been allowed, we'd only need 1 foot. As a result of the steeped roof, we now require only a 8.7 foot variance, not 16 feet, not 20 feet, just 8.75. Further, in terms of economic feasibility, you heard Mr. Scotty at length, who's probably one of the premier real estate appraisers in the state, who went through this project with you and indicated clearly that an area variance would be required and is required to allow 20 units to make the project feasible, economically feasible, and the Commerce Department will not allow any financing of a project like this unless there's a minimum of 20 units. That's why Mr. DeLeo didn't seek any Commerce Department, Commerce Corporation funding because his projects are too small. But when you get into this size, there's a minimum requirement of 20 units to obtain Commerce Corporation financing. And that financing, as Mr. Scotty testified, is absolutely necessary to be able to build this project. Let's just think about what's been testified to here. One of the witnesses said that this lot's been vacant like 20 years. Well, why would a sophisticated businessman like Mr. Reuter just built the Belvedere, spent $15 million on it? Why would he let sit a vacant piece of property in this location, which everyone says is the best location now in Bristol, if it was so easy to develop it like all these objectors say it is? I suggest to you common sense again. If it could be done profitably, it would have been done a long time ago. I would ask you to take a look at and think about the process that this project's going through now. starting at the very beginning with the planning board, the HDC, been before you on 2 occasions now for appeals. We have been able to comply with all the Historic District Commission regulations, the planning board regulations. We've received the approvals from both of those boards. And at master plan, the compliance with the comprehensive plan was determined by the planning board. It came up here on appeal. You denied the appeal, sustained the planning board's finding that it was in compliance with the comprehensive plan. In terms of the design issues, all, if not 99% of the objections here are to the size and the design. And Mr. Lusk admitted, this is just my design. Anybody could design it. The chairman pointed that out. I'm willing to bet if you got 10 architects in this room and said, design something over here you think would fit in with the area, you would get 10, maybe more, designs. Because it's aesthetic. It's who likes it and who doesn't. As they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Those issues were determined at the Historic District Commission and the Planning Board. So I would suggest to you that this issue of compliance with the comp plan is clear. I read to you the specific provision in the comp plan acknowledging this project when the comp plan was done years ago. And this project, in terms of the merits of this project, it's going to add some additional very nice residences in the area, restaurant, some commercial, and off-street parking, which seems to me everyone believes is needed. And the variances are required in part to comply with some of the requirements of the Planning Board and Historic District Commission regulations. In terms of the area variance to allow the 20 units, as Mr. Scotty testified, that's basically necessary to make this project economically feasible. And the Superior Court and the Supreme Court of this state have recognized economic feasibility as an issue for a hardship and the basis for granting a dimensional variance. As I've said, that height variance we're seeking is 8.75 feet. It's not 16 or 15 or whatever else, whatever other numbers have been promulgated here by the objectors. That is not a significant height variance, but most of it is as a result of a steep roof being required. One of the other things you've heard tonight is that the roof's going to come down if you grant these variances and this building goes up, and everybody up and down that street, not aware of any other properties that are similar to this, but the argument goes that everyone else is going to be entitled to variances, and everybody on the street in the area will be able to put up larger buildings and get variances. Well, it's not how it works. I'm sure your solicitor has instructed you in the past, every case is different, and you judge every case on its facts and on its merits, not because other projects received a similar variance. You've heard the reasons why these variances are necessary. Mr. Adam, the architect, went through in very great detail each of those variances and why they were necessary. Their Superior Court cases have indicated, and we've cited them to you, that the number of variances, which is another argument made by several of the objectors, there's so many variances, you're destroying the zoning code, etc., etc. Well, this is a rather unique building, and it's in a unique location. The variances are necessary to make this building aesthetically pleasing, to comply with some of your requirements of the HDC. And also, I would point out that in one of the cases that we cited to you, the Superior Court reversed the zoning board that had denied variances, 15 variances, and the court held that the mere fact that we're seeking a large number of variances is not a reason to deny the project or deny any of the variances. State law requires that every city and town have a procedure, just as this, for people to seek variances when they need relief from the zoning code. It's in state law, it's in your zoning code, and it's, of course, that's why you are here. The Zoning Board of Appeals is created for this types of issues. So the argument that, well, you should comply with the zoning code, you should comply with the zoning code, well, one, this project's not economically feasible to comply with the zoning code. We're looking at maybe 2-3 units. Even the 9-unit project, which was promulgated by one of the objectors, experts required 12 to 13 variances. So the remaining dimensional variances, in addition to the area variance, are relatively minor in scope. They certainly won't have an effect on the neighboring properties. Mr. Scotti addressed that issue also. This is a good project. Mr. Reuter, as indicated, is prepared to spend $10 million on this project. It's the largest project in Bristol, I think, in quite a while, probably since the Belvedere, where he spent approximately $15 million on that project. By all accounts, that project is a real success and is a benefit to the town. Here he is now trying to do this project, and he needs the relief that we've requested so that this project can be economically feasible and also be something that everybody will look to and be proud of, despite all the projections of this being a terrible thing down on the waterfront. It's going to ruin the waterfront, etc. I'm sure when the Stone Harbor was built and some of these other buildings were done, the same projections of doom and gloom were probably made at that time. My experience of 40 years in doing this zoning work such as this is that there's always projections and speculation of what bad result will be as a result of the grant of a variance or the approval of a project. And this is not one of them. This is a project that's going to be a real benefit to the town. It's a vacant lot. It's been vacant for quite some time. Mr. Lawyer is here ready to step up and spend a considerable amount of money to put in a first-class building, the design of which was, frankly, basically dictated by the HDC after many, many meetings and back and forth and negotiations. So the
2 minutes. 1 minute.
Thank you. So I would ask that you review the expert testimony carefully and take a look at the standards. We've certainly shown the hardship, particularly the economic infeasibility issue is the major problem here for this development, and that's the hardship. Where we've reduced this project from 24 units to 20 units in an effort to minimize the request for the area variance. And we would ask that you take a look at what's been done next door and take a look at the evidence. And this process has been going on for 2 years. I respectfully ask that you vote on this project at your earliest convenience, approve the variances, and let this project go forward. Still has to go back to the planning board for preliminary and final, and other issues that of addressing the development certainly will be addressed at that point.